Still says starting. Oh, okay. Well, no, 1 minute early. Okay, let's get perfectly centered here so we don't irritate my obsessions. Close. Hold on 1 sec. Let me just go to the main live stream and make sure we are here. Slow mode is on. Comments every 30 seconds. So I don't know if it's necessary, but it seems to help me a great deal. Can everyone hear me and see me? I guess is the question. Okay, that's me. Put it on pause. Shrink the window. No, that's maximize it. Shrink it. Good enough. Okay, and now I'm going to see this. Hi, ads on lives now. Typical. I get notification when I'm already here. Good news, Sarah Bellum. How you doing? Roll call, Jeff Peterson. Patrick. Lawrence Ham. Jeff Peterson again. Keach's Revolution. Thank you for all the kind words, by the way. I've been reading this. You may hear some noise in the background. Let me just get back to my visual. This is why you might hear some noise. Okay, they're getting personal now. Okay, so everyone can hear me, and we're good. And we are at 12 watching now. Okay, here's the comment. Sorry, I was on delayed. Okay, awesome. So we have a good theme today. It's actually going to be something that I'm going to do a separate video on sooner than later this week. So I'm going to you'll hear some of these things twice, but one thing I've said before in previous videos. You hear the dogs in the background? One thing I've said in previous videos is I heard it on Howard Stern in an interview with an album with a rock band, and they said that a musician has his or her entire life to write their first album. And this album, this anecdote is basically like, the culmination of over 12 years of commercial litigation. And we're going to talk about the actual litigation process. What happens from day one of a disagreement to judgment and appeal. Now, if anybody asks questions, I'll try to answer. Someone had suggested I do the super chat thing where if somebody sends a super chat and asks a question, I have to answer it. And I would love to do it with two caveats. One would be that I would be nervous that someone would think that that's going to be legal advice, or they're going to ask actual legal advice questions, and that'll get me in trouble. And the other one is that they're going to ask questions that, polarizing questions that would have no purpose other than to polarize, I guess. But anyways, I'd be game for it. We'll see where it goes. If everyone can take 2 minutes to tweet and share, and I guess we'll give like maybe 2 or 3 more minutes for everyone to come and join in because it takes some time to get the notifications. Let me see. Okay, so I got a notification for myself. Just unlock my phone so I can charge it while we do this. There I am. Okay, awesome. And if anyone has any questions, just ask away. I hear someone coming into the house. The kids are in the park now. My wife and I have this thing called tag team parenting, which if no one's seen the video, yeah, there's a kid in the house. If no one's seen the video, tag team parenting, it's a funny one. It's basically like, tag, you're it, and we swap respective roles and go back to parenting. And then when this live chat is over, I'm going to go back outside because it's beautiful outside. KC Auto Doctor, I am not obligated to answer any of our questions, regardless if they are super chats or not. No, I understand it, but it's sometimes the super chat creates the expectation that I have to answer, but I don't want it. I'd love to do it. Just I do wonder, actually, in law, if someone does a super chat and then considers it a legal advice question, and then I get in trouble, will I get sued? He must answer all of our questions, or we will sue. Aramel. Are the questions or for like legal things? I missed a couple of minutes. Oh, no, the questions, ask any questions. Any questions are good. I mean, I love it. I've done a few Q&As from beginning, but now we have more of these themed legal vlogs or legal chats, live streams. What am I talking about? I'd never ask a polarizing question. Do you love Trump, Scott West? That is a very funny joke, Scott. The question, that is, the phrasing of the question. So let's see. By show of hands, and sorry about the slow mode, but it does... on the one hand, it helps me make sure I get to the questions, but it also prevents potential abuse, although I don't really have very much of that. Do I get a lot of sun every day? Now that it's spring, I'm trying to get as much sun as I can because sun is the ultimate feel-good substance, I guess, other than Red Bull, maybe. Is Lil Wayne's cringeworthy? that particular deposition was, I don't say cringeworthy. Cringeworthy now is so broadly used it doesn't mean anything. That deposition, I'm sure, I suspect he might look back at it and maybe regret some of the demeanor in that deposition. But hindsight is 20/20, as they say. And the greatest thing is, and I'm gonna do a video on it sooner than later. I came across not Lil Bieber, Justin Bieber's deposition from when he was being sued, and I've only watched a few of the clips, or maybe a half an hour of the clips, and I don't know the exact nature of the lawsuit yet. Although I gathered enough information from the deposition, but an analysis of Justin Bieber's deposition is coming up sooner than later. It was glorious. Aramel says, aside from myself, who are my favorite law YouTuber? I love Legal Eagle. I suspect anybody who knows of my channel already knows of his because he's much bigger in number, and I don't recall Jeremy Anthony. Yeah, the I don't recall is classic. Legal Eagle is the one I watch a lot. And what am I waiting for? I'm waiting for an update on the MatPat situation so I can do a follow-up video on that because I really, really want to see where MatPat's situation is going. Let's see. Jeff Peterson's, will you do an update on AG Barr, please? Yeah, that's very interesting. The risk about that is I think that the Barr situation has just reached pure partisan politics where I'm not sure what new information can be brought to that discussion. It's all partisan spin on both sides, but we'll see where it goes. There's a few updates that are going to have to come. I'm thinking maybe a Barr update or a Mueller report Barr update. Smollett for sure, because that doesn't ever stop developing as a story. What was the other one? MatPat, I'm dying to see what happens, but I suspect I know what's going to happen already. And what else? Yeah, we'll do that. Oh, let's see. Ben says, I love watching your vids. You do a good job staying objective. It's an interesting thing because everyone has their beliefs. And I think partiality occurs when someone doesn't appreciate necessarily their own beliefs and how it's influencing their analysis. Of course, it's always easier to identify other people's bias than to identify our own. And I have people not accusing me because their observations might be right, but observing my bias based on what they think are my political leanings. But I get accused of being a leftist and a conservative, I think with equal regularity. So I think maybe I'm doing a good job. Hoosier Back Outdoors is in the house. Hatbox Ghost. We'll take a few more questions, let a few more people join the chat. Why do some depositions remain AEO during some federal lawsuits and not others? I was deposed for literally 17 hours. Not one bit of it became public. The defendant settled. So Hatbox, do we want to answer this now or stick around for when we do this, when we talk about this in the context of litigation? Hatbox, flag the question if I don't get to it. Remind me, but we should get to that when I talk about the litigation process and the deposition part. Okay, we got Terry Ty here. It says, okay, and Based Marduk, thank you very much, Based. I love this picture. Everyone should know the meme behind this photograph because for a second, I thought Based Marduk that's what he looked like, but then I remembered that meme, and when I saw it on a bigger screen, it's a good meme, classic. Blas says, now you're obviously liberal because I'm Canadian, right? This is where other people's preconceived notions play into their interpretation of what they think about others. Every American thinks I'm liberal because I'm Canadian. A lot of people think I'm conservative because of whatever. But these are all just cookie cutter labels in any case, which is why I take issue with them in the first place. Oh, SNC-Lavalin and Justin Trudeau's election. We're going to have to do a follow-up on that because federal elections coming up sooner than later, and it's going to be fun. Okay. Has everyone tweeted this out and shared it, and then maybe we get started on the actual theme and then see how far we go? I feel that the SNC-Lavalin has also become purely partisan politics. It seems that no one really cares about the truth and are only concerned with forwarding their own position. Epic Bacon 07. For anyone who doesn't know the SNC-Lavalin in detail, go check out. I did a video on it. Philly D. Oh, he's another guy I watch a lot of. Philly D did a video. Thank you, Sarah Bellum, for tweeting. Philly D did a great analysis of it. SNC-Lavalin is the embodiment of partisan politics and how when you are in the partisan politics blinders frame of mind, it's what I call a perpetual moving target. And if anyone doesn't know, at the beginning, it was the spin was Trudeau didn't do anything wrong in his sort of pressuring Jody Reid-Bold to not proceed with criminal charges against SNC-Lavalin for corruption. And then when, the stuff hits the fan, the media spin And the media speed, because it is, a lot of media got objectively angry with Trudeau, but a lot of people who I know are liberal Trudeau supporters, the justification became, well, he did it to save jobs, because had they gone forward with criminal charges against SNC-Lavalin, or the fact that it hit the fan, would have cost Canadians, I don't know, 35,000 jobs, which is right. But it's always that moving target where it's bad, or it didn't happen, but if it did happen, it wasn't that bad. And if it was that bad, we'll find another justification to excuse it, because that's our party and that's who we want to forgive. This is left and right. This is not about liberals or Trudeau. It goes both ways all the time. It's just a question of circumstance as to which case it is. I hear someone screaming coming into the house. Who's coming in? Well, bear in mind, we're on a live stream. Who's this? Oh, she's getting water for the plants. Okay. The most recent SNC-Lavalin letter that got leaked in the past week or so is really damaging. It shows how corrupt the politics have really become. Casey Auto Doctor, politics is it's corrupt everywhere. It's just pure. It's unfortunate. It's pure corruption. Okay. So, shall we get started on the litigation process by show of Y's and N's? Yes being Y and no being N. Who here has ever been involved in a lawsuit? Defendant or plaintiff, a party, a witness, or whatever. How many people have actually had experience in the litigation process? Okay, well, I'm not seeing any Y's or N's. Regardless, Hatbox Ghost says yes. The Scott West, yes. Okay, let's see if there's any N's here. Anybody not been involved? Okay, Ben Beauregard has not been. And we got Kira, kind of not sure. Okay, so this is very interesting. If this represents anything, majority of people have been involved in a lawsuit. Lawsuits, I always like to say, they occur, I don't like to say, it's just the reality. They occur when the individuals are no longer able to resolve their own problem. And the proverbial stuff has hit the fan between the parties, and they go to a lawyer. And when they go to a lawyer, it's because the parties aren't talking. And the second they go to lawyers, you know darn well the parties are probably not going to talk again until ever. And so what happens in the litigation process? Like, you take a standard dispute. Let's just say in the video that I picked the neighbor cutting down the other neighbor's tree while one neighbor's gone. I haven't edited that video together yet, and it's coming. But let's just take another one where a neighbor does work on their property and redirects water onto their neighbor's property, something like that. So you have one party who gets wronged and goes and it is no longer on speaking terms with the adversary. And there probably have been correspondence back and forth, but at some point it always gets into swearing, it always gets into name calling, it gets into accusations of bad faith. Someone says, I'm going to go to my lawyer and I'll see you in court. You go to a lawyer, and we'll say the plaintiff and the defendant, that's how we'll call them here. Plaintiff goes to their lawyer before there's any proceedings. And yeah, no, I'm not, this is civil proceedings, not criminal, by the way, guys. So the plaintiff will go to their lawyer and sit down with their lawyer. And when they go to their lawyer, they're stressed, they're unhappy, they're in a fight. They are no longer able to resolve it themselves. It's high levels of tension and it's high levels of anger, generally speaking. And they'll give all the facts to their lawyer that they think are relevant. And a lawyer, their job is going to be to sit down and not just receive the facts that their client is giving them, but actually to push their client and prod their client and get the facts that maybe they need to know that their client might not want to elect to tell them. And they may or may not get this all at the stage where the lawyer is going to be drafting what they call the letter of demand, which is that letter that you get from a lawyer saying, you've wronged my client, pay up or see you in court. And so the lawyer gathers all the facts that the client is giving them, prods a little bit, and has to do a little bit of pushing themselves to make sure that they're getting the actual story. But I would say the majority of the time, they do not get the full story from their client when drafting the letter of demand. And they'll gather all the information. They'll write a nice letter. It's going to be, it has a form. Anybody who's been a lawyer will know they have, like, there's a template. There's a mental template of a lawyer's letter. I represent the interests of blank. My client has advised me as follows. On such date, you did so many things wrong. And, oh my God, I'm late. Can you start over again? You didn't miss much. Lawsuit, introduction. Now we're talking about what happens when the client goes to see their lawyer. The lawyer drafts the letter of demand, and it always says something to the effect of, we represent the interests of blank. We have been advised that on X date you did Y, causing damages, troubles, inconvenience, etc. Pay our client the amount of damages sustained by a given date, failing which we will institute all the legal proceedings to avail ourselves to their client. It's a template. It's basically pay up by a certain date or we sue you. And the lawyer will always or oftentimes serve this on a Friday afternoon, what I like to call the Friday afternoon special. Serve a letter of demand on somebody on a Friday afternoon to really mess with their weekend. And it's a practice of lawyers, and it's usually at the request of the clients, because they say, like, yeah, I'm so angry at this person right now. I want to make their life as much of a living hell as possible legally. So let's serve a letter of demand Friday evening while the people are sitting down for dinner with their family, because you know it's going to ruin their weekend. And that's typically what happens. Then the party will receive the letter served by bailiff, who comes knocking on the door and says, I have a letter for you. Will you sign here? What's your name? Et cetera, et cetera. Or they'll serve them at work, which is always embarrassing. The defendant receives a letter, and they're going to go to their lawyer. We got Phantom Frei in the house. Phantom, day, good day. The defendant will receive the letter of demand, and they'll go to their lawyer, because they're not going to try to make contact typically with the plaintiff's lawyer. And if anybody has never been in this position and is thinking that's a good idea, it's a terrible idea to try to make contact with the plaintiff's attorney thinking that you're somehow going to talk yourself out of what's in the pipeline. That when you talk to opposing counsel, they are never there to represent you, to help you, or to do anything to help you. And anything and everything you say to them can and will be held against you in the court of law, literally. James Bond, Robocop. Hello, hello. So you get the letter of demand. The defendant goes to their lawyer gets the letter, and typically if the lawyer is well-versed or well-trained, they'll immediately respond to the lawyer saying, I'm in receipt of your letter. I'm going to review it and revert to my client and get back to you ASAP. Because oftentimes what happens is the defendant will receive a letter. They'll wait till the last day, or maybe even go past the deadline, give it to a lawyer, and then the lawyer's like, you had until this date to respond. I better just let the lawyer know I'm in the file so that they can pause for a few seconds. Defendant's lawyer is going to go through the same process with their client. Tell me the whole story. This is what they allege in the letter. Give me your side of the story, blah, blah, blah. And then, and by the way, if anyone thinks if I'm talking too fast, let me know. Thanks for doing, this is one meal, one day. By the way, thanks for doing this, Viva. I have always been interested in this process. It's phenomenal. It plays out virtually the same every time. It's just a question of when it settles, earlier than later. Sarah Bellin says, phone call from the husband and now I'm lost. I'll need to watch the last 10 minutes. Now we're at the stage where the defendant has received their letter of demand, has gone to their lawyer, and their lawyer goes into the same fact-finding mission with their client that plaintiff did with theirs. Except the defendant's lawyer now has more information to represent their client than did the plaintiff's lawyer when that lawyer wrote their letter of demand, because you remember, the plaintiff is only giving one side of the story. The defendant now has one side of the story plus the defendant's, their client's side of the story. So they're going to have more information. They're going to write a rebuttal to the letter of demand saying, not only is what you're saying inaccurate, it's patently false. I should start off how the letter actually starts. We are in receipt of your letter of demand dated October 10th, 2018. We have reviewed the letters and our client has advised us to respond as follows. My client vigorously denies all of the allegations therein, blah, blah, blah. And to reestablish the facts, be advised that. And then they'll go into their, sorry, I just got distracted in the comments and I'll get to it in a second. They go into their whole song and dance. You did this to my client and you're ill-informed, misinformed. Your client did this to mine, blah, blah, blah. We will vigorously contest any proceedings instituted by your client and reserve our rights to avail ourselves to all of our legal remedies against your clients for abuse of process, et cetera, et cetera. It's like a dance that you know what's going to happen before it happens. It's just like a variation one way or the other. Mark Twain, history doesn't repeat itself, it tends to rhyme. These dances always rhyme. So it's the same sort of play. It just depends. Oh, 1, 2, 3. Oh, there we go. Okay, boom. It's just the way it goes. The facts will change, the lawyers will change, maybe some of the content of the letter will change, but it's the same thing every time. So defendant now responds, sends their letter, serves it on the lawyer, by the way, because interesting fact, and this will be good for any aspiring law students or young lawyers. Represented parties, a lawyer cannot interact, at least in Quebec, and I suspect it's the same everywhere. A lawyer cannot directly correspond with a party that he knows is represented. And that means basically that, the defendant gets a letter, goes to see their lawyer. That lawyer can't address a letter or communicate directly with the plaintiff. They have to go through lawyers. Once lawyers are involved, down you go. And it's an ethical breach, actually, to make direct communications with a party that a lawyer knows is represented. Dogs in the house. Can you do some more ostrich egg cooking videos? Yeah, Terry, I've actually emailed the ostrich farm, and I think I'm on the waiting list, but I'm going to make sure. Start of procedure. That's all. Dogs in the house. Can I hear Darth Vader in the background? Yeah, that was the dog. Base Marduk brought me here. Awesome. And then we got Hatbox. Yep. Depot request came right before Christmas from the defendant's counsel. Then they requested 6 days of trial. And after driving the 7th time down, they said, harassed me on Twitter. Yeah, well, if you haven't seen what I think about lawyers taking client business to Twitter, you can watch my Michael Avenatti vlog. Kitty Denise, thank you very much. Lawyers should not be taking client business to Twitter. It's in Canada we have a different culture. Oh, someone's in the house. We have a different culture in terms of what the practice of law looks like. It's much less commercial than what it is in the States, but no, not a good idea. So where were we now? We were at the letter of demand. You respond. Lawyers cannot communicate with parties that they know are represented. And funny thing, because some lawyers do it, some lawyers will put their own client in carbon copy on an email that they will send to the other lawyer. And they do this typically to sort of impress their own client with how mean and aggressive they're being with opposing counsel, because that sort of stuff impresses most clients. Like, look at the way I talk to opposing counsel. Aren't I worth my $300 an hour? I hate it, and I systematically, unless it's an oversight as a practice, removed anybody's client from CC because I never wanted to be accused of directly or indirectly corresponding with their client by responding to them but keeping their client in CC. It's another practice that I think lawyers should never do, but lawyers do it nonetheless because they want to show their clients how big they are. I never CC'd my own client unless there was an agreed upon reason, and then I would just forward whatever correspondence I sent to opposing counsel to my client afterwards, because I don't necessarily even want my opposing counsel having my client's email address. Did I see something off topic? But how much does an ostrich egg cost? $37 Canadian. Listening from near London, South Wales. Awesome. Are you annoyed with lawyers who harass at hospitals and ERs? We don't have that. What they call the ambulance chasers, or what they derogatorily or accurately call ambulance chasers in the US. $37 Canadian for the ostrich egg. Yeah, we don't have ambulance chasers, and I'm just using it as the expression because we don't have the same type of personal injury in Quebec, even more so than the rest of Canada. Like, it's not an industry that we have in Quebec. You don't get millions of dollars for bodily harm in Quebec. It's a little bit more reasonable in Canada, but it's nothing like the States. I think the example I gave a while back was a kid who got blinded by a thorn bush that were planted around a football field in a public park, and he got blinded in one eye. Got I think it was $70,000, but even that seems a little high to me. Okay, good. We're at 52 people. That's nice to see the number slowly going up. Now we'll do this in chapters. I should keep timestamps so that I could know when I could timestamp later on so that people could jump to certain subjects. So that's it. The lawyer responds. Now the lawyers are in, and clients no longer talk to each other except to harass each other on Facebook or Twitter by saying, I'm suing this guy. And the clients oftentimes take their dispute public, and I always told my clients, don't do it, because you will do and say something that you're going to regret, or that's going to come back to bite you in the context of the lawsuit, because the other party is going to screenshot the post or the screenshot whatever and keep it for their benefit. Nick Badal says, my sister is studying common law, but law isn't common, right? What's the difference between laws? Okay. Common law is what we call the English system, which is there are codes of law, but typically there was no codified system. It was jurisprudence or what we call precedent, which was like big judgments making the law, and that's how the English sort of established their law. Then you have the codified civil system, which is Quebec, where you have it's called the Code Napoleon, Napoleon's code, because he codified French law in an actual book. And so that's the difference between civil and common law. In Quebec, we sort of have both because we are a civil law province within the common law Canada. And so some law is civil, and then some law, I say federal, but no, the common law is typically for the other provinces. We have a codified system. All of our laws are in a civil code. We rely on common law judgments as well to some extent, but we have a codified system of law. So let's see, what was it saying now? Great to finally catch you, law, Andy Marshall. Thumbs up. I think it was the left hand. creepy porn lawyer. That is referring to Michael Avenatti, who is widely dubbed the creepy porn lawyer. Okay, so lawyers are now involved. Clients are no longer talking to each other. Lawyers are no longer talking to clients. It's two lawyers now. And they know what happens. You send a letter of demand, you get a denial response with its own threats, and it's the waiting game. Are they going to sue? 90% of the time, if they sent a letter of demand, they will. And how long is it going to be? And so that's it. So then now what happens is the plaintiff who didn't get paid within a certain delay, the defendant who didn't get paid if they asked for something within their delay, plaintiff is going to sue. They file suit. And how's the trademark going? Terry Ty, the Canadian one has been received. I used LegalZoom to do the American one, so we'll see how that works. I tried to do the American registration. The American registration for trademark is much more complicated than the Canadian one. We got a kid here. What you doing? Getting something for the fairy garden?
Yeah.
Okay, don't. I wouldn't take glass because it might break. Okay, whatever. Does Canada have any professional class action plaintiffs? Oh yeah, no. Okay, we have a ton of class action lawsuits. It's big in Quebec. It's big in Quebec and Canada. Wait, what are you trademarking? Fucht? No, I'm trademarking Vlawg, VLAWG, as relates to video-based legal vlogs. Base Martic says, I've been learning about tech in the legal field, apps where you find attorneys file paperwork, etc. How would you say that is affecting lawsuits? We only recently modified our code of civil procedure to allow for service by email. That's how sort of behind the ball we are. Is that the right word? Georges Saint-Pierre, I don't know where that came from, but yes, GSP, Quebec hero. We're sort of a little bit antiquated in terms of procedure. That said, what was the thing? Our small claims court now can be done entirely electronically, which is amazing. You file your documents, your proceedings, your exhibits electronically, much simpler. Okay, so plaintiff sues. This is where we go now. Plaintiff goes, the lawyer drafts, it's like a story. And if you know what, it's probably better I do this video before I actually break down the Nick Sandman lawsuit. I just haven't had time to read it yet. The plaintiff's lawyer, or the party that sues first, they basically, a legal proceeding is a story. It's a very boring story written in a sort of code language that nobody talks like in real life. But it's what we call legal jargon. It's legal phraseology. It's unreadable and it's very difficult to understand. And I joke that it's deliberate so that it allows lawyers to maintain a monopoly on the practice. Okay, Andy Marshall says ostrich egg versus quail egg. Phantom Faye. I want to see that vid. I did ostrich egg versus chicken egg. I did so many egg videos. You gotta check them out. I think I have an egg video playlist. Okay, so regardless. A motion, it used to be called a motion to institute proceedings. Now I think it's called a statement of claim. That we changed the terminology here, but it's basically the lawsuit. It tells a story, and it starts off by, typically if it's done properly and well, it introduces the parties, it sets the context, and then it gets into the allegations of fact. And our rules of procedure here is that it's one fact typically per paragraph, which is to say, a paragraph is like item 1, item 2, item 3, and you don't want to jam a bunch of facts into a paragraph because it gets confusing to read and difficult to make evidence of a trial. I make law actually interesting instead of a normal snooze fest. It's interesting. If you can stomach it, it's interesting and it's interesting. But okay, well, anyways, thank you. So each paragraph is one fact, and you say plaintiff is X. Describe plaintiff. The defendant is Y. Describe the defendant. Age, what they do for a living, whatever. And then you set the context of what happened leading up to the dispute. You allege the facts that you're going to have to prove as relates to the dispute, and you make your conclusions. Therefore, it be ordered that payment of whatever. What a lot of people don't really appreciate is it's not because something's written in a lawsuit that it's a fact at all. It's strictly an allegation, and it needs to be proven. And until such time as it's proven, it's just an allegation. So who fells trees in May during a blizzard? It was in March. It was March or April. I had that video lined up for, I just never got around to publishing it. So the plaintiff drafts their lawsuits. The lawyer will review it with their client, and a good lawyer, or not even, you could be a bad lawyer. A methodical lawyer and a lawyer who's looking to protect himself has to verify each and every fact with their client and get their client's written approval that that lawsuit is accurate and the facts in that lawsuit are accurate. Because a relationship between lawyer and client is not much different than a relationship between two people, it's great when it's going well, but when it hits the fan, everybody starts blaming the other for everything. And if a lawyer has not covered his or her tushy by making sure to get written confirmation, all the facts in this are okay, and you get your client to sign off on it, if there's a bad allegation in the lawsuit and the client says, I never authorized that, and why would you say that? That's false. That's how conflict arises, not just between the parties, but between the party and the lawyer. Greetings from Poland, my friend. Booyah, Artur. Nice to see you. And then we see Zeltenbu that says, it's like how people think theory, but then they remain. It's like how people think theory, but they remain hypothesis, and when verified is a theory. Okay, I may have missed something before that. I know nothing of the Gariepi Destiny lawsuit yet. I'm going to have to look into that. And so I said, so the lawyer will draft the proceedings, have his or her client review it, vet it, confirm that it's okay, sign off on it, and serve it. And when are they going to serve it? They're going to serve the lawsuit on a Friday afternoon. That's just what they do. There are rules about when you can serve, between what hours and what days. It depends on your jurisdiction. There are sometimes like peculiarities of a lawsuit. Sometimes you're going to need an affidavit in support of the lawsuit. And there's all sorts of procedure, but basically let's keep it as simple as possible. Someone's asking for a sum of money. You allege everything you need in the proceedings. You get your client to sign off on it. You serve it. It gets received by the other party. And it gets served out. The peculiarity about all this also is you serve the proceeding by bailiff on the party, not on their lawyer, unless you get some sort of, dogs are doing it again, unless you get some sort of confirmation from their lawyer that you can serve the proceedings on them. Because the exception to the not communicating with the represented party is that typically the initial proceeding has to be served on the defendant proper, not on their lawyer. And improper service can sort of affect a file. If the defendant was never served properly and there are deadlines that had to be respected, it could really screw a plaintiff. So always check that. Random dude. Hello, dude. How you doing? Serving on a lawsuit on a Friday is so nasty. It is. I was once subpoenaed. And I may or may not ever get into this, but I may get into it later on. I was once subpoenaed. A long story on a motion that I drafted, and it's complicated. Yeah, I got it on a Friday afternoon, and anyhow, yeah, it's never fun to receive anything by bailiff, and lawyers know, but then again, in fairness, I'm not sure if Friday afternoon is worse than Monday morning. Like, yeah, you'll ruin the person's weekend, but getting served on the Monday morning is going to ruin your week. One way or another, you're going to be unhappy when you get served with something, period. Very rarely is anyone unaffected. Let me just close this window. By getting served with a subpoena, a lawsuit, whatever. Okay, so plaintiff's lawyer serves the lawsuit on the defendant. Defendant receives it, gives it to their lawyer. Depending on the jurisdiction, you may have delays within which to appear or to file a defense or to file a contestation. That's whatever. Okay, sorry, I'm just going to read this. Chrono says, have you read the book Kushner, Inc.? Charles Kushner was involved in crazy illegal stuff. I have not. Phantom Face says, do I find the end result of the Jussie Smollett case suspicious? He basically got scared. I don't find it suspicious. It's just, I said in that, I don't know if I said in that video or in another video, but corruption does not necessarily mean breaking the laws. Corruption doesn't mean necessarily illegal activity. Corruption can just mean unequal, unfair, unjust application of the laws. It's, I did the video on Jussie, but it looks like legitimate existing laws were applied. The question is, are those laws applied equally to everybody? And when they're not, that goes from equal application of justice to corrupt application of the justice. And then you have the outright illegal corruption, like the briefcase on a step with cash in it. Okay, yeah, James Pod, Robocod, GBR has never been served. Good. If you can avoid it, all the better. Okay, so where were we? Service on the defendant. Defendant receives it, brings it to their lawyer. And the lawyer has to announce that they're defending their client, whatever. That depends on the jurisdiction. But basically, if you get served with something, go to a lawyer. Don't call the other lawyer and say, what's this about? They're not there to help you. And even if they're good people, their loyalty lies with their client, and they can't give you advice to help you. It's just a harsh reality. Oftentimes, not oftentimes, but it happened to me where I would sue someone on behalf of my client and get a call from the defense. And I said, look, I can't give you any advice at all. Go see a lawyer because I'm representing my client and there's nothing I can do. I can't tell you what to do because that would be the conflict of interest, absence of loyalty to my own client. So that's it. So you get if it ever happens to you, go to see a lawyer. You have to just do it. Sometimes it happens that the defendants get the documents, don't go to court by the date they have to, and they get themselves into a ton more trouble than they have to if they were just to have done things properly. Typically, things run smoothly. They go to see a lawyer. The lawyer takes the proceedings, okay, negotiates. We call it a timetable or a protocol now in Quebec. But you negotiate basically like, this is what we're going to do by when we want communication of documents. We want examinations. And, we're going to file a defense. You can file a response to our defense. There might be a cross demand, a cross claim, which is the defendant saying, not only do I not owe you the money, you owe me the money. And that's a procedure in and of itself. So that's what happens. You negotiate the steps that you're going to do in a lawsuit. Now, here's a big caveat because it's also jurisdictional or procedural, and I don't know what it's like in other provinces. There are thresholds, like monetary thresholds, for which you get to depose or not depose. So below a certain amount, if you're only claiming like $10,000, there are no out-of-court depositions, examinations, discoveries. Yeah, Kim Fox is the attorney who draws. So you guys discussed that, but no, there's a whole thing that Kim Fox, the judge's son was working for Kim Fox's. Connections are a wonderful thing when they can be used to your benefits. Connections is, can lead to corruption. And then connections can lead to corruption also if people don't like you. Like, someone doesn't like you who's connected, they can, apply different laws with just as easy. I love your Little Wayne video, Phantom Faye. Thank you very much. That Little Wayne was classic. But it's also classic just to see how someone who's sharp and smart, how they can pick apart questions, not necessarily to their benefit, but it's it's what it is. Okay, the deposition. So there's not always depositions in lawsuits, but by and large there are. And this is what a lot of people also don't understand. A plaintiff, if they're not properly advised by their lawyer before they sue, can be in for a rude awakening when they get into when they dive into this legal pool. Because a plaintiff often thinks, yeah, I'm going to sue them, I'm going to examine them, I'm going to make their life a living hell. But you sue a defendant, the defendant is going to make your life a living hell as well. They're going to get to depose you, examine you. They're going to ask you for documents. They're going to, when they depose you, dissect your life. They're going to ask questions that you don't want to answer. They're going to ask for documents you don't want to communicate. They're going to ask for pictures, for phone records. It's not a one-way street. Litigation is a two-way street, and it's sort of like an alternating two-way street. And this is why people sometimes get the wrong impression. When you sue someone, it's like, it's my one-way street now. Yeah, I'm going to draft the proceedings. I'm going to say everything bad about you I've ever wanted to say. Then I'm going to serve you on a Friday afternoon. Screw you. Ooh, well, now it's red light on your street. Defendant gets the lawsuit. And now it's my way. Oh, yeah, now I get to examine you. In your motion, you alleged all these things. Did you not know that they were false? Didn't you do this yourself? And it's like, I don't want to say mutually assured destruction. It's just, it is slinging the stuff. Both sides, they each get turns. It's like I saw this competition where people whipped each other with belts. I mean, it's basically like everybody gets the turn whacking the other with the belt in litigation. It just depends on what day it is. And in depositions are not fun. They dissect you. They undress you, so to speak, in front of a judge. Am I missing any good questions? Okay, so Hatbox Ghost says they were releasing texts between my wife and I. This is getting into the confidentiality and public disclosure of depositions. So in Quebec at the very, oh, by the way, nothing in here constitutes legal advice in case of something was blocking it. Phantom Faye, I'm doing the Justin Bieber deposition and I'm doing the Bill Gates deposition, but Bill Gates is just so long. It takes too much time. Plus I need to research a bit of the actual lawsuit because I don't know what they're about. Okay, depositions. In Canada, there is what we call and I talked about this in a previous video, I forget which, implied undertaking of confidentiality. When you examine people, unless it's procedurally provided for, typically the depositions are not automatically part of the court record. There are certain types of depositions which are automatically in the court record, automatically. But typically, the depositions are private. They're confidential until the party decides to file them, until the party who conducted the examination decides to file them. And it's not the case that the party who conducts an examination decides to file it as a matter of fact. So you cannot make public the deposition that has not yet been filed in the court record. Once it's filed in the court record, you can then Jared P says, is this considered legal? This is not legal advice. This is not advice. This is just imparting my experience, and just sensitizing people to what the process is like. Mutatis mutandis, depending on your jurisdiction. When you do the deposition, you grill this person. It can be 1 hour, 2 hours, 1 day. I think we had depositions. I once did a file where we had depositions over like 3 or 4 days, and it's confidential until you decide to file or not, the party who did the examination. Once they file it, it's public, but I would still tell people not to go around sending the deposition to friends and family and posting it on Facebook, because first of all, nobody cares. The reality, people don't care really about your lawsuit with somebody else. It's very meaningful and personal and intimate to the person, but it's like, I don't know. I mean, it's like talking about your medical conditions with other people. Very rarely are people, really interested in other people's infighting, because everybody has their own issues to deal with. And so showing the deposition and bad-mouthing somebody because they came out as bad in the deposition, it doesn't really ever help. But once the deposition is filed, it's public in theory, unless there's some court order, unless there's some documents that are filed under seal, which are confidential. That's it. It's filed. Both parties get deposed typically. The order can be agreed upon. And let me just make sure I'm not missing any good questions here. Friendly PSA, Game of Thrones episode 4 is tonight. You're welcome, guys. This is Jared P. I have never watched one episode of Game of Thrones, and I kind of regret it because I'm not part of this conversation about how dark and unwatchable the first episodes were, or the last ones, whatever. Chronos says, so I told my friend I'd give him legal advice, which was obviously a joke. Stuff like, were you there on that day, Your Honor, and Your Honor, my client is guilty. Is that okay to do? It's all fun and games until someone forgets that it was a joke. So the deposition process comes and goes. You request documents. After the deposition, you'll have a delay within which to provide these documents. And from what I understand, in different jurisdictions, you can have, I learned this from the Alex Jones deposition, you can have an RFP, which is request for particulars, or request for production, sorry, which can actually occur before the deposition. And in Quebec, we do the same thing. We say like, okay, we're going to be conducting examinations on a given date. We'd like communication of these documents in advance so we can ask the witness questions on them. The whole process is tedious. It's tedious and exhausting, especially for the witness or the party being deposed. Then what else happens? Okay, so you have your depositions. You have your defense. If there's a defense and a cross-claim filed, typically the plaintiff will then file a defense to the cross-claim. And at some point, you say the file is ready for trial. Let's put it on a shelf and wait for our trial date. And this is going to blow some of the minds of Americans out there. In Quebec, at the very least, we don't have one judge assigned to a file from beginning to end. So the parties will conduct their litigation among themselves. They'll have the depositions, the proceedings. If ever a fight occurs, so to speak, in the middle of a file, they'll make a motion to court, and they're going to get any random judge who may have never heard of this case or heard any part of this case prior to. And so on any given motion, if you have like someone's not sending documents and you have to go to court and ask the judge to compel them to produce documents, you're starting from scratch explaining to that judge what's going on in that file. And I think this is totally different from, at the very least, Texas or California, where you have one judge designated to a file, which makes so much more sense, so that if ever a disagreement or an interim motion comes up in that file, the judge, in theory, has experience and knowledge of that file, and they're not starting from scratch every time there's a fight. Parentheses closed. I want to see if I got some questions here. Austin Johnson, seems like the Sandy Hook's lawyers were trying to do is make a production and viral video. I don't think they were trying to do that. I think they were trying to do their jobs. But I think the fact that they know that it's being video recorded and that it is going to go public changes demeanor, and it changes the way people deal with a deposition. Anyways, I fundamentally disagree with video recording depositions for the purposes of publication. It just, it's like the congressional hearings. When people know they're being video recorded and people are watching it, it becomes a show and it doesn't become a process. Let's see what we got here. Casey Autodox says, Tyler, Bar Association has rules on when lawyers can provide legal advice. That's why most lawyers on YouTube are very clear that their content is not meant as legal advice. Yeah, it's like it's the in French we say trop fort casse pas, which is too strong doesn't break. Yeah, you should never take legal advice on the internet. You gather your information, but you need local jurisdictional advice. Period. It's just like there's also the expression that the client who has himself, the lawyer who, whatever, the client who who represents themselves has a fool for, I forget the expression, forget it. Base Mark says, do you have other social media where we can follow you? I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Twitter is the only one where I'm at, the Viva Frei, and not Viva Frei, because 1, 2, 3, oh, there we go. Okay, because someone has Viva Frei and they're not active, but I can't seem to get the handle from them. Okay, so by this time we're sort of at the end of the process now. The proceedings are filed, the depositions have been carried out, and the parties say, okay, we're done, we're ready for trial. We go tell the court that we're ready, and the court will give us a date as soon as they have one. Twitch, do Twitch. I could do Twitch. I think I'm so bad at learning new technology. It's channel idea: review, react videos to famous legal proceedings made on Netflix. Well, I'm gonna maybe just do that on this channel. This channel is basically, my Viva Frei is basically becoming the vlog channel with the weekend video that nobody's really interested in. You can come say hi. No. And then I have that other Viva Random, which I'm just posting random videos. Well, let's just see where I gotta get the frame in here. Hold up, wait, I can't see what frame. Oh, okay, wait, you're not in. Hi. My face looks red. I look like I got a little too much sun today. Okay, back to
I need one more glass.
One more glass?
Oh, one's glass.
Okay, this is my office desk, is also the kitchen counter. What do you think about the Covington smear case against the kids? Yeah, that's the next one I'm going to do, but I have to. That lawsuit is 100 and some odd pages, and it's not that it's long, that it's complicated. It's just I want to break that down properly, because I started reading it, and there's material in there. Everyone says hi, Marion. All rise. she's back out. No God Viva may need to unsub. Sorry, no God Viva. What? Oh, Game of Thrones. Okay, yeah. Look at this fish. Okay, so lawsuit goes on a shelf. You're waiting for your court date in Quebec. You wait a long time, and this is also going to blow the mind of some people in the States. I think I scheduled a trial for April 2020. This is the last trial that I have. I scheduled that in 2018, and that file started in 2015. So that goes to show you, it's just an immensely, down you go. It's an immensely long process. I mean, literally, people die in the file. Literally, lawyers die, witnesses die, and it takes so long in Quebec sometimes that the mere passage of time is a deterrent to the legal process. Kronos says Game of Thrones is really overrated. I don't have time for another. I can't get into another series. Dexter was the last one I ever loved, where I would drop everything to watch it. Breaking Bad, I loved, just not as much as Dexter. We did Better Call Saul for a few seasons. What are the other ones? Modern Family, I guess, doesn't count. Whatever. If there's another one, I'll get into it. But Game of Thrones, I never watched one episode. It's too late for me now. I'm done. You got a nice burn from cutting that tree down. No, that was April. Breaking Bad was the bee's knees. Yeah, Breaking Bad was awesome. What is my favorite fish to eat or to catch? I'll wait for the answer to that question. So, in Quebec, you could wait 2 years for a trial, and depending on how many days you need, it could be forever. From what I understood in Texas, it's like 6 months. You have a judgment, and once you go to trial, oh yeah, that's where we go. So, put the file on the shelf. Tell the court how many days you need. In Quebec, at the very least, you have what they call a provisional rule, which is you no right to a speedy trial. It's civil. It's civil matters, not criminal. But it's so long sometimes. It's soul crushing. And by the time you get to trial, the people no longer want to go to trial. It's like they moved on with their lives, which is why 90% of all lawsuits that are filed end before a judgment, one way or the other. That's something that most people don't understand. Do I think the PC culture has gone too far? Bill, remind me about this question afterwards. Okay. So what was I saying? So you put it on a shelf. You tell the court, call us when you're ready. You get called to court to schedule a date, at least in Quebec, and the date could be 6 months to 2 years later. And then you show up for your trial. The trial process, for anyone who's never been to that, is tedious. I mean, there's the rule, the mathematical rule in law is that it takes a day of prep or a day and a half of prep for every day of trial. So if you have a 10-day trial, you are prepping for 2 weeks prior to the trial. You have to issue subpoenas to get the witnesses and hope that they're still alive. You have to hope that you can still find your witnesses. If you have experts, you need to prepare your experts. Preparing for trial, I mean, if anybody loves it, God bless them, because my biggest letdown is that I didn't love it. I never loved it as much as I thought I was going to love it. And if I could have loved it, you know, I would have not had. I wouldn't have certain insecurity in my life in terms of career insecurity. But I just, you know, I could do it, and I could do it well as far as I'm concerned, as far as my clients were concerned. But at some point, I couldn't imagine dedicating the rest of my existence on this earth, my one life, to this. But if there's lawyers that love it, you know, I was sort of jealous in a way, because I did see lawyers who said they loved it. I believed that they loved it and had no reason to doubt them, but I couldn't do it. There is no issue, Dustin Burnett, no issue on my disputing the copyright claim. My dispute's not gonna be granted. And I know when I use other people, or I know when I use other content in my videos, it's just the risk. It's the way it is. There's a lot of abuse of fair use, and there's a lot of abuse of copyright. It goes both ways. Okay, so where was I? Preparing for trial. Let me just get to Sarah Bellum's question here. You said in a reply that lawyers tend to keep their cool during depositions, etc., but judges tend to be the ones that get angry. What's the worst case I've ever seen of a judge blowing up? Okay, let me think. I don't want to tell anecdotes that would allow anybody who I know from the city to know who I'm talking about. One story was that a judge, someone's cell phone kept on going off in court because they were an elderly person and didn't know how to actually silence it. And with the judge, who was also, you know, one of the, call them more, I don't want to say enrageable, more impatient judges, by the third time kicked, I mean, they kicked the lawyer out of the courtroom. And another time, like, you know, the judges just get irritated with what we call chicanery of lawyers. I mean, they deal with lawyers day in and day out, and if they find out that the lawyer is not being totally upfront with them, or totally honest, or totally, what's the word? Not candid, but forthright, and this is to say, mischaracterizing the opposing party's position, they lose it. They tell the judge they tell the lawyers to be quiet, sit down. If the witnesses are disrespectful, I mean, they'll end a deposition sometimes. They deal with this stuff day in and day out, where they don't have the patience for it. Lawyers don't benefit from losing their temper because judges don't like it. Okay, so that's that. Let me just see if I miss any good questions. They're not good, but any questions here? I would hire you, live a little 888. You would, but you know what the problem is, and this is going to come to where I'm at now in terms of my career and mediation. I have seen the devastation that protracted litigation has on people, clients, you know, parties, witnesses. I'm going to cough, hold on. I've seen the devastation. I can't be a party to that devastation anymore, even though I was good at fighting. It's like, when I grew up, my dad always said, you know, he fights day in and day out in the practice of law, and I understood what he meant after doing it for over 10 years, 12 years. You fight, and then like you realize that you tend to feel that there's no net benefit from the fighting, because it either ends in a settlement that should have occurred 2 years earlier if the lawyers and the parties were being advised responsibly, or you know, properly, or even realistically, or it ends in a judgment, which generally speaking leaves everybody angry. I can tell you, a number of times I've ended up with a great judgment on paper and a bankrupt defendant party that I'm going to get to this, Nick, and a bankrupt defendant that you can't execute a judgment against, or you end up with a judgment that's good but that says bad things about you, and you don't want that judgment out there, but it is. Nick Bada, thank you very much. Every lawyer needs to watch Making a Murderer. I know. I read the executive summaries of Making a Murderer. I just never actually watched it. I know everything that happens in it. And from what I'm told, it's just absolutely captivating, depressing, let's say demoralizing, mind-blowing. Tyler C says, you have a conscience and a heart. You chose a heart perfection, practicing with those two things. I did a video on this also, where it's like, when you try to make your clients realize that this is what's in store for them for the next 3 years, they don't appreciate it at the beginning. And by the time they appreciate it, it's too late. And this is not to sell what I'm doing now in life, because I haven't even started selling it, but I got my accreditation to become a mediator. And that's basically what I'm going to start pushing as my profession, so to speak. You know, I like to think that if I sit down in a room with two parties who are involved in even the most heated dispute, there's a way of sensitizing them to an alternative, amicable dispute resolution to the dispute. You know, and I said in one of the other videos that a bad settlement is better than a good trial, and someone didn't appreciate or didn't like that comment. They said that's disloyal to your client, and you know what the expression means, because I didn't make it up. It's an old paradigm of law. It means typically, first of all, a good settlement is one that leaves both parties equally dissatisfied. Period. So that is, if there's a settlement, it's going to be a bad settlement to some extent, because both parties are going to feel that they left something on the table, and that's what you have to do in order for there to be a settlement. If there's never going to be a settlement if each party wants 100% of what they're asking for. And so when I say a bad settlement is better than a good trial, it's that you will be the parties are going to be unhappy with the settlement because they're not going to be getting 100% of what they want. 99.9% of the time, they're not going to ever get 100% of what they want. They might get 50% of what they want down the line, and it will have cost them everything, or it will have just cost them too much. And they only realize it by the time they get there. It's sort of like, good experience requires life experience to actually appreciate. So right now, I'm gonna move into and try to develop this field of mediation, because I'm call me optimistic or maybe naive. I think if I sat down two parties, whatever, involved in the most heated dispute, I could make them appreciate the immediate monetary value to peace between them. If only to minimize cost long term, if only to minimize heartache long term. So that's it. Okay, so you get to trial. Prep for trial. You subpoena your witnesses. You have to schedule your trial, right? Because typically, if it's like a 5-day trial, you're going to have multiple witnesses. You don't call all witnesses and make them wait there for 5 days. So you have to organize who's going to come on what day and what they're going to testify on, and you have to prep your witnesses and all sorts of things. Don't lawyers want to rack up costs? You'll have to get past them to mediate. That is a very realistic hurdle that I'm foreseeing. I still have what I consider to be a good reputation in the Montreal legal community, and especially in the big firms. I mean, all of the big firms, I have experience and contacts and friends and colleagues there. It is going to be a real concern. It's like I said in one of my previous videos and vlogs, opposing counsel in a file, we were talking once, said, settle a file, but don't settle it too early, meaning that if you settle it too early, it costs the lawyer money. The lawyer ends up leaving money on the table. And it was the most cynical thing I've ever heard, and I never forgot it. But yeah, I'll get past that. I do think though that the social tendency is going to be one towards mediation. It doesn't matter if the lawyers are going to recommend it or if the lawyers are going to be averse to it because it might cost them money. People are realizing to some extent that this legal system is broken, to some extent that it is not ideal in another sense, and people are going to start appreciating on their own the value of mediation and alternative dispute resolution. So that's it. So you get to trial, you plan meticulously for your trial, you have your witnesses. The trial itself is a whole sub video, which we might do, but the plaintiff goes first. They present witnesses, cross-examinations. So that's a whole thing to get into on its own. But trial comes, trial goes. A judge typically has 6 months to write a judgment, to serve, what is the word? To release? To publish their judgment. They have 6 months to render judgment, at least in Quebec. And the day comes where the lawyers and parties get notified of their judgment. And it's the most nauseating day of your life. It's like, I think the only thing that was more nauseating to me was finding out if I passed the bar exam. Okay, so hold on, let me just see what's going on here with the comments. I don't want to throw you off, but I'm very curious about the artwork over right with the chipped corner. Oh, this thing right here? Let me see if that is not art. That is actually, this is cool. This is one of my favorite fossils. Here, hold on. Let me see if am I showing this properly? Google Hangouts. Here, check this out. This is a mass mortality plate from the Green River Formation in Wyoming. And if I'm being totally honest, I thought it was going to be much bigger when I ordered it off eBay, but look at the detail. You can see, they say when you can see the eye sockets, it's a good specimen, but it's glorious. I love fossils. Okay, hold on. Okay, so you get the it's like an envelope. It comes in an actual envelope from court, and it's the judgment. And because I like torturing myself with suspense, I would never read the conclusions before reading through the entire judgment. So I would sit there, and every judgment is for whatever the reason, it's written like a suspense novel. It's always about halfway through before you realize which way the judge is going. And the judges have to give the impression that they are impartial, that they gave both sides a fair hearing. So it always, it's back and forth in the early stages of the judgment. Then it gets clear which way the judge is leaning, and then you get to the conclusions. And judgments can make you want to vomit, or they can make you want to celebrate. And even the ones that make you want to celebrate later on can make you want to vomit, for the reasons I was talking about. So let's see here. Yeah, I would love to go to the Green River and just like pick my own fossils. I love it. Well, there's a bunch of good ones here. There's whatever. And then we have our, let me just frame this. This is, for anyone who remembers Babu. That's Babu in a bag. Okay. I never cremated a dog before, but it was our first family dog, and he was adopted, and we sort of loved him, and he was great. And I figured for our first family dog, we should do that. But like through my life, I think I've had 9 dogs. If we end up with 9 bags of ash on a mantle, people might start asking questions. Okay, you get the judgment. It'll make you sick or it'll make you happy, and then it can go to appeal. And there's appeal as of right, or there's appeal with permission, or there's no appeal depending on the type of file. It's and if you go to appeal, it's the exact same process basically over again, with few more rules and less witness testimony, because typically, at least in Quebec, you don't have witnesses retestify on appeal. An appeal basically just deals with the file as it is and gives deference to the trial judge for assessment of witnesses and credibility and the like. And that's it. And so what ends up happening, you get your freaking judgment. It's either good or bad. It's either appealable or not. And sometimes it's appealable, but your client doesn't want to appeal it because it's $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 more. And Hatbox Ghost says, yeah, we did the first thing to our first. It's funny. I grew up, we never would have even thought of that as a family. But with our dog, it was just like, it was a no-brainer, and our kids wanted it, and it was nice. It is nice to have the dog. I was going to find a fun, a creative way to spread the ashes, but I want to keep it there. Judgment. Yes. Can you appeal an Isaac Wonder order? I don't know what that is. We may have different jurisdictions here, but that's what I said. You read the judgment, and then what people don't appreciate is you can win in the lawsuit and be mortified by what's in the judgment. I mean, the judge, it's not because somebody wins that it doesn't mean they were not abusive and liars and schemers and bad people and overall, awful. A judgment can say bad things about you. The judgment can say wrong things about you. This is another thing that I think we touched on earlier, but the judgment creates a legal fact. It doesn't create fact. And a judge can get something wrong. It can be black on white wrong, and there's nothing you can do about it except for appeal. And if you don't appeal, it's black and white wrong, and you can go run around and cry until the cows come home that it's wrong and the judge got it wrong. Too bad. That is legal fact. As of the time, it is what we call res judica. If you don't appeal the decision, at one point it becomes unappealable. And when it's unappealable, that is as good as fact as you're going to get. And it can hurt people, and it can really make them sad. And it can make them sad that there's going to be this judgment out there that people are going to study about in law class. Can think of some classic examples here, but like you become a legacy. You become a lesson for others. So that's it. That's why, all that to say, litigation is a process that can kill people spiritually and physically, and literally at times. Like people, people get ill. People lose it for themselves, and it's terrible. So that was it. Now, and that is all to say so that's the punchline. Is I have all this legal training, and I think I'm better off. I think I'm better serving the world to potentially delve into this mediation and sensitize people to how you can resolve, how valuable it is to resolve a dispute as opposed to going to trial, and doing it sooner than later, because it's sort of like, what's the economic principle of lost costs, sunk costs? It's like the longer it goes on, the more you're indebted. The more money you lose in Vegas, the more you think you have to gamble to get it all back. And it's terrible thinking, and it takes an impact on people's lives. That's it. Okay, so let's see this here. Chrono says, posting troll comments with 5 on 5 reviews, that should get to the top. That was a Yelp thing, okay? I'm not sure what that is. Isaac Wonder says, Isaac Wonder order is unique to the Irish court system. Too narrow of a topic for Viva Frei to really cover. Yeah, well, we also don't, I would not know anything about it. Anyone have any questions? Let's see, about an hour, that's good. 59 people left, that's nice. Everyone's having a good time. It's a beautiful day out here, so we should, I don't know what time it is or what the weather is for other people, but I can feel the high five tag coming back from my wife where it's going to be my turn to go substitute. Sunk cost fallacy. Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's the idea that the longer the litigation goes on, the more money people bury into it, the more hatred and animosity that develops between the parties. And so I'm going to try. I think I can do mediation well. I think I can be a good mediator. And at some point, the other thing is the parties have to realize that neither party holds the absolute truth. And even if they get in front of a judge, the judge is very rarely going to side 100% with one party over the other. What's the worst court behavior that I've ever seen in a courtroom from Kronos? I was civil litigation. I never did criminal. I never did family. So I didn't see a lot of the stuff where you would expect the really bad stuff. I can tell you the funniest thing that ever happened to me, which was one of the biggest surprises where a lesson you learn from your own mistakes, was learning that our expert, and this is what I say, you can prep a witness for 2 weeks, but you can never prep them enough necessarily. But I found out at one point that our expert, someone who we had filed as an expert, actually had their professional license suspended at one point in time, which doesn't look good when you're at a voir dire, which is trying to recognize someone as an expert. What rights do you have to reschedule a trial? Nick Bedell, that depends on jurisdiction. All I know is from Quebec, you really have to have a health reason to miss a trial. There has to be some compelling reason to miss a trial, and even then, it becomes difficult depending on the judge, because when someone schedules a trial, it takes someone else's trial away, and judges don't like people who schedule trials 2 years in advance and then have to reschedule them too shortly before the trial. And it also depends on how much in advance of the trial you want to reschedule it. Scott says it's dangerous, but I feel like I know you and really like you. I can see how stuff could feel for the circle. Well, I don't know. It's this is the public world, but the it's easy. I think people could effectively know me based on the videos that I put up. So let's see what else we got. I think a lot of people will confuse unethical being against the law. Well, that's another thing. It's will you sue TMZ philosophy? Oh, well, okay, this is Harvey. Will I sue TMZ? I'm never going to sue TMZ. I adhere to my own advice. I would sooner leave money on the table than delve into this world of lawsuits and suing out of principle. You have to figure YouTube money. Even if a video hits 1 million views, it's $1,000 per million of views in the best of circumstances. My TMZ video is never going to make it anywhere, but maybe, I don't know. I don't even know what it's going to do in principle. Even if they renounce to their copyright claim, I'm not sure that it's going to set a precedent for anybody else. It's just the thing about the copyright, and we can talk about it. We have a few minutes. There is copyright. There is abuse of what's the word I'm looking at? I forget it now. Of fair use on YouTube. There's no question. Everybody includes like entire bits from other people's content and then claims fair use because it's a commentary or whatever. There is that abuse out there. But the flip side is, yeah, there's a ton of abuse of copyright claims for what is objectively fair use. I mean, like the video that I put out where, Joe, thank you very much. The video that I put out where I was talking about the Satriani Coldplay plagiarism. It was the PewDiePie where I made a joke that his congratulations song sounded a lot like Lonely Island. That video got claimed by Joe Satriani for that little bit that I used that was comparing the two songs. I think I disputed it, but it got overruled, and I'm not going to take it further than that. So that's it. No, I'm not going to court with this ever. I mean, it would have to be a big issue to go to court for, but then you have to make a decision that this is what you're going to dedicate the next little bit of your life to. And I have things that are going to bring me more pleasure, even if they don't bring me more money than that. Okay, Susanna V says, hey, great content. Looking into studying law myself. Looking to ask, what made you go civil law versus common law, or was it just because you were living in Quebec? That was happenstance. Also, I didn't get into. I applied to McGill, didn't get into McGill. Shame on me, but I had done my undergrad there, and there was, the discussion as to whether or not they prefer non-McGill undergrads for the law program. But whatever, it ended up to that I just studied at Université Laval, which did not have a common law program. I could have done it for an extra year, but by the time I graduated, I was 27 or 28, and I was pretty sure I was not going to leave the province. I can always go get a common law accreditation or certification. It won't take more than a year, but I'm not leaving the province. I love Quebec. It's a great place. Viva Frei, he's a 9-year-old. Yeah. I'm in Hollywood, and you have a good face for camera. Live a little 88. Why, thank you. I love this. I got this haircut at Dance Montreal. Not an ad, but did someone fall?
No.
Oh, there's a kid who's not our kid in the house. Okay.
Ate a bag of chocolate.
Our dog just ate a bag of chocolate. Okay. Rouge et Or, Viva. Yeah, they were very good. Oh yeah, Damp's haircut for the nicest skin fade you can get that I've ever found in the city just yet. I'm in Hollywood. No, Hollywood, California, not Hollywood, Florida. I don't even know why I would have thought Hollywood, Florida first. Okay, let's end this in there. Like, we'll go 4 or 5 minutes. I'll see if I got any questions that I missed. Someone says, yeah, a hot hatbox ghost says you always narrate and use the video for reporting, which is definition by fair use. Well, there's a number of criteria for fair use that I've done a few videos on it, but how much chocolate was in it?
It was newest chocolate.
Well, we might have another dog to add to the mantle. Pudge, the paralyzed dog, there just ate a bag of chocolate that she found on the floor, there wasn't much in there, don't worry. No, it was not. There were a few eggs, and it's also a myth as to how toxic chocolate is for dogs in any case.
Some dogs are more.
Yeah, I've asked the vet. If they get really sick, they throw it up, and they have to eat a ton, and they have to be small dogs and very sensitive. I get extra virgin olive oil just fell down. That's great. I get Dustin Hoffman. I've gotten a few others. Okay. Milk chocolate. It was milk chocolate. We did a belated Easter egg hunt with the neighborhood kids in the park. Easter. Okay, hold on. What did I miss here? PC. Talk about the PC issue. We may do a totally standalone live stream on this. I think the PC culture is out of control to the extent that I think on the one hand, people have lost a sense of humor to what would otherwise be good-natured humor, and on the other hand, I think the PC culture is one where it's a shame, but I think people walk around looking for things to be egreged at for whatever the reason, and it's out. I mean, it's out of control when it starts killing the ability of people to have dialogue because there are people get insulted and you don't even know why. Then the question is really: are people looking to get insulted, or are people not being sensitive enough? But so that's as far as it'll go. Like I weigh my words a lot just because I'm not looking to offend. Period. And I probably do it more than others because I am neurotic about saying something to offend someone without knowing that I've done it. But like when comedians have their lives ruined for making jokes that are politically incorrect, that sort of contradicts the very essence of stand-up comedy, which is intended. If you don't like it, don't watch it type thing. I've told you, I've said it before. I'm more for imperfect free speech than I am for perfect censorship. If someone doesn't like something, don't listen to it. I don't think people should have their lives ruined over statements they made, things that they said, and I think people are. I don't even think that people are actually as sensitive as they purport to be. I think it's sort of like the thing about social media is people want to find things to be outraged about. That's it. Again, do you love Trump? He's not. I don't love. I don't love anybody. Or like this is the thing. Like you have to either love or hate, or you have to agree with everything someone does, or agree with everything, or disagree with everything someone does. If things are nuanced, and you can have an overall sentiment about a person. You can hate someone and love certain things, or agree with certain things that they do, and you can love certain people and disagree with certain things that they've done. I happen to, generally speaking, admire or like Conor McGregor. I vehemently disagree with some of the things he's done and some of the things he's said, and the things that I think are wrong and that shouldn't be said. But I overall like Conor McGregor, and I think people are overall are good people. But sometimes get tempted or enticed, or people say things to shock, and people say things to offend, and people say things to make a show. In sports, in politics, everywhere. And I think in general, people should be forgiven. But you can like someone and still totally disagree with something they did. And I publicly disagree with a number of things Conor McGregor did, despite liking him. Okay, let's see what I got here. Any questions that we're missing? The left basically killed comedy. The dog has got a balloon on his leg now. I would. First of all, I'm not a stand-up comedian because I wouldn't want to offend, knowing that to have good comedy, you're going to have to offend just as a base rule. But you have to be courageous to want to be a stand-up comic in this day and age. I mean, I love movies that cannot be remade today, and it's questionable whether or not they can even be watched by mainstream society. Some of the best comedies, the classic comedies, they're not more. Some of them are not even 10 years old. Could not be remade today. I'm trying to think of Tropic Thunder is not one that I liked. I actually did not like Tropic Thunder when it came out, but I don't think that these movies should be prevented from being made. And then Ben Stiller recently said, no, there's no chance of a Tropic Thunder sequel, and that's because those types of movies just can't be made anymore. It would create movements of outrage. Dumbest lawsuit I've ever handled. I've never taken a dumb lawsuit, but I am saving a story for another vlog about. I'll save stories for other vlogs. I can't. I'm not acquiring enough new law experience to be able to give it all. Get it all out now, because I have 12 years of life that I can sort of piecemeal out, and I still have some files and do some work now, so I'm still gaining some anecdotal stories. But I gotta give it out piecemeal, because if I give it all out too quickly, I'll have nothing to talk about in a year. Dave Summer with Trudeau. Trudeau scandals are going to bite him in the butt next election. I say this without any political dog in the race. When I just say this as a pure observation, when left-leaning media in Canada starts to publicly turn on Trudeau, you know that there's going to be a problem next election. Hold on. I mean, the media, which has been very friendly to Trudeau historically, is not being so friendly to him anymore, and that's going to be a problem. I mean, you don't have to be conservative or liberal to appreciate that. Please do a radio show. Maybe Siri. It would have to be a Siri show. Viva would love a video on the past Gawker case. What is your quick opinion on it? No, Gawker got exactly what they deserved in that. I could do, as far as I'm concerned. There was the whole issue about public celebrities and the threshold for what constitutes defamation being higher for celebrities who live in the public light. But it's not because I don't think it's because someone's a celebrity that a sex tape, especially that, becomes newsworthy. And I listened to a lot of Howard Stern, and he was talking about it a lot because some of the characters involved in that make appearances on Howard Stern. But the Gawker got what they deserved, and they knew it. They knew when they were doing it. But it's the media. It's media sensationalism, and it's media chasing a quick buck, and then it's terrible. It was terrible. It ruined lives, and for what? It's not because Hulk Hogan is a wrestling celebrity that was justified at all. I'm thinking about a podcast. If anybody can help me get one started, Marion's been pushing me to do it for a while. Just haven't gotten on it. I can't stand learning new technologies. It took me the longest time to figure out how to do a live stream. Okay, so what do we say here? Shall we call it quits? Caleb Fodor. What made you choose litigation over transactional work? I always grew up with the joke that the only real law is litigation. I dabbled in transactional law, but then I did my first due diligence. And while litigation might crush the soul over time, transactional work, I wanted to scratch my eyeballs out after a weekend. It was not for me. But Nick Bedell says he'll get me set up. Okay, I wouldn't say no, because I knew Marion was the brains of the operation. She definitely is the tactical brains. There's the creative, and then there's the strategic. Can you pass me a wrench? I always ask. Sometimes it works. Wrench means moderator, right? I'm a bit of a control freak. Some people should probably not a control freak in that sense. I'm neurotic, where I fear other people's mistakes as much as I fear making mistakes my own. Are you following Brexit at all? What are your thoughts on Theresa May? I haven't been following Brexit as of, say, the last little while, but I've been reading some stories. But, I've said these a couple of times because Brexit is sort of like our Quebec referendums. At some point, if you don't listen to the democratic vote, it's not clear if you live in a democracy. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens. There's, again, you don't have, this is not a liberal or a conservative or a Democrat or a Republican thing. You don't have to agree with it to observe that there is a global sort of pullback to the independent state as opposed to the global sort of government. And so the Brexit is going to be the what's the word? The litmus test? It's going to be the test to see if the will of the people is going to be respected by the government. I mean, I can't imagine what's going to happen if it's not. It's not. It's like it's not democracy anymore when you do a do-over because some people didn't like the first result. That's not democracy. Theresa May is awful, and the Tory party lost a lot of seats already in these Euro elections. Yeah, I'm not into it enough. I'll get boned up on it again. I just read an interesting lawsuit that I may have to do a vlog on, which was a Texan bartender who is being sued for having served drinks to an inebriated individual who went to shoot up a party of his ex-wife and got killed in the shootout. I mean, I think there were a couple of lawsuits attempted in the province where they attempted to go after the bar for serving drinks to someone who got into an accident afterwards. But I'm gonna have to look into that because that one caught me by surprise when I read it earlier today. Okay, what else do we got here? Ollie Garland says, okay, that's a drinking game. This is Live a Little 88. Do a podcast. You have a lot of us listening to. I prefer YouTube because this is sort of like a living podcast. I guess people can't convert this into a podcast on their iPhones to listen to later. And maybe if I just find a way I'll record this at the same time and turn it into a podcast. But maybe it's a different style. Yeah, the bartender just got criminal charges filed against her, way more serious than just a simple civil case. Again, Texas has very unique criminal laws. Yeah, and from the limited amount that I read into it, I wonder how the burden of proof. It has to be beyond a reasonable doubt how they're going to prove it. But I'll look into that. Maybe it'll make for an interesting law vlog. Okay, what shall we say? Capture the rest of the day? I think we're good. Yeah, Jeremy Anthony says the murder of a 9 at a cowboy viewing party. I thought it was a stretch. No, say at one point. I mean, it's an interesting thing. I can't see how. I'd have to know about the criminal laws how that has been interpreted in the past because I read the wording of the statute to see how it's been interpreted. Okay, so let's do this. Cut the video feed and upload MP3 in Google. Okay, that's Ollie Garland. How to turn a live stream into a video feed. Okay, people will wind it out. I'll go. I think there's a little bit of sunlight left, and I gotta hit the treadmill before the day is up. Stay tuned. More videos coming. We'll do a live stream maybe next week. Talk about some of the other videos that went up last week. And any recommendations? Message me, Twitter me, Instagram. I try to read as many as I can, and we'll do it. All right. Peace out. Thumb over while I go to this and do this. I have to figure out a more eloquent way to end live streams than this. And peace out.